technology is the most powerful change in the world of education.
Everything changes.
Welcome to the Emerging Technologies in Education podcast, delivered to you by Clever Books Company.
Dear listeners, thank you for joining Emerging Technologies in Education podcast series. And we have Jason McKenna today. Hi, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. And I want to give you the word to introduce yourself, tell us what you do and how you connect it to education.
Sure. So once again, my name is Jason McKenna, and I am the Director of Educational Strategy at a company called Robomatter. We're located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the United States, and we develop educational solutions centered around robotics and computer science for schools, consumers, and countries all over the world. We really consider ourselves to be a leader in both computer science and robotics education due to the fact that we're able to rely upon our partners at Carnegie Mellon University and also University of Pittsburgh to provide the research behind our curriculum solutions. So we're able to offer solutions in terms of teacher professional development, curriculum, tools like programming languages and software that really allow teachers and schools to teach their students the language of innovation. And what we're really trying to do is provide students with opportunities to create with technology instead of just consuming the technology, but do that in a way that's backed by research so teachers can really feel confident implementing these solutions in their classrooms.
Wow, this is impressive. Thank you very much for that great introduction. And I definitely feel you are into using technology for education. Can you please elaborate me a little bit on why you feel that it's beneficial to apply different technologies for the educational purposes?
Sure. So we view teaching technology in much the same way that students would learn, for example, biology in high school. If a student is learning about biology, they're learning about the world around them. And technology is so ubiquitous in today's world, we feel it's very important for students to know about the technology around them, just so they can learn ways to interact with the devices and with the technology that they're using every single day. So just a few examples of that. If I'm using the internet, it would be great if I had an understanding of how the internet actually worked. If solving routine hardware problems in their homes with some of the devices that they may have in their home to make a smart home, for example, having some knowledge around that would be important. If students are playing online games simultaneously with their friends, or if they want to know if buying something online is secure or not. These are all ways that technology impacts students' lives every single day. And what we want to do is give them an opportunity to interact with that technology so that they have, a more rich interaction with those particular things. So to use the example of learning about biology again, if I'm teaching high school biology, I don't expect my students all to become biologists in the future. And it's the same way with teaching technology. We don't expect all of the students to become a software engineer or robotics engineer, but instead we want to give them this really good foundation so they can have these rich and meaningful interactions with all the technology tools that are available to them within their lives. So in viewing teaching of technology, really what we're trying to do is we're really just trying to teach students about the world around them and give them more opportunities to have those rich and meaningful interactions with the tools and with the devices that they have in their world.
You totally spot on, because this is something what I think, like teaching with the technology and teaching technology in general actually creates kids to get this foundation for the future. And this is the most important thing, because now when they are already acquiring those technology skills right at school or outside school, but they're like during their school years, they're much more ready for the uncertain future, and they know the trends, they know what technology is out there, and they are so much understand what they want to do and which direction they want to go. So thank you very much for that point. I find it really useful.
Yeah, and I could just add one part to what you mentioned there. I think it's really important that we as educators, we don't treat technology or the teaching of technology in a strictly utilitarian sense, right? So what I mean by that is oftentimes when people talk about the need to teach students about technology, it's always very jobs focused. So if you have to learn these skills in order to get a job in the future, and while that's important, there are many other aspects of it also. So if you think of something like art, for example, to me, I think something that's really interesting that's going on right now is the way that technology is changing art, and then also how art is impacting technology. So you think about things like virtual reality and augmented reality, and how that's really changing how people are able to tell stories. Those are very, very interesting things that, once again, don't really have anything to do with, oh, I need to learn this particular piece of technology in order to be able to get a job. So I think some of the problems that we have in teaching, students about technology and talking about technology with schools is oftentimes people take a very limited view of technology. But like we were saying before, really, once again, teaching students about technology is just teaching them about the world around them, whether it's around the devices that I use, or it's how I apply it in really cool applications like art.
This is an amazing point. Like I think that this is exactly what's supposed to happen. So by teaching which technologies exist out there and how you can use them is actually the great foundation, like you said, and it's actually the broad overview of what is out there and how the world is rapidly developing and how it could be helpful for the kids to get acquainted with that world from the school bench. So I find it like really useful. And if we go a little bit deeper in different technologies, Jason, like which ones do you think and why would be useful for the education? You already mentioned the virtual reality and augmented reality for creating stories. So if you want, you can elaborate on those, or maybe you can add something else.
Yeah, where I come from for this is I think that any technology that is based on the learning sciences and based on what we know about how students learn, those are the ones that are a good supplement education. So an example of that is, as I mentioned previously, we're partners with the Carnegie Mellon Robotics Academy. They're our research and certification arm. And one of the very first studies that we did with them was referred to as the Robot Algebra Project. So the idea behind that is I can use math to program a robot to move distances, to be able to go through an obstacle course and all these other applications. So since I can use math to program a robot, therefore robots must be a really cool and engaging way for students to be able to learn math. And what we found out initially during the course of that study is that's actually incorrect. Even though students can apply math to programming a robot, unless you have a particular way that you're building that into the curriculum, students are not going to see those math gains that you want. And moreover, the goal is you don't just want students to learn how to do the robot math better per se, but instead you want students to be able to learn math concepts that they can apply in other domains. That's the goal of all of education, is to learn knowledge that can then be transferred to new and novel situations and experiences. So, but the only way that you could do that is if you develop curriculum and teacher training in a way that really brought those outcomes to life. So that was a 5-year study. So we went through and we studied that for 5 years until we were able to publish, a peer-reviewed study that showed that if you have these tools, you develop curriculum around these tools, you are then able to achieve the learning gains that you want to be able to achieve. So really what that study did is it really looked at a lot of assumptions about how technology can actually be used. So I can use technology to teach skills like math and make it more hands-on, and take these abstract math concepts and make them more concrete. Or I can raise student engagements because they have these hands-on robotics, which are cool, and the students get to build with them. So that'll raise student engagement. What we found out is those assumptions are actually not true unless you go in and study the outcomes that you're trying to achieve and develop the right curriculum behind it. So my suggestion is if you're a school or you're an educational leader and you're looking to implement technology in your classroom to supplement what you're teaching in your classroom, I would say choose the technology solutions that are based on what we know about how students learn, and then apply those things in their classrooms. What you don't want to, first of all, you don't want to think that technology is a panacea. It's not going to solve all the problems that you have, in your school, in your classroom. And instead, just introducing technology into your classroom is not enough. You have to really find solutions that have been tested, that have been researched in order to achieve the learning gains that you're really trying to be able to achieve in your classroom. So once again, my suggestion would be to find the technology that is based on research on how students actually learn and how it's able to accelerate that process.
Thank you so much for this point. And I have a question to you, like, do you follow yourself any specific resources that you would recommend to keep on top of what's going on at the technology for education world?
There are a lot of great conferences out there that you can go to see what is the latest in technology education. So for example, a big organization here in the United States is CSTA, which is the Computer Students Teachers Association. They have their annual conference in July. That's a great conference. And with tools like Twitter, no matter where you are, you can keep up on those conferences and you can see what people are talking about. You can see what the presentations are, and you can see what people are, the outcomes and the conclusion that they're drawing from those particular things. So the listeners to this podcast can obviously follow me on Twitter because I'm, retweeting all those things and interacting with those things in those conferences. But that would be the best suggestion that I could give if you're interested in following what these particular things are. Look at these educational conferences that are going on all over the world. Follow these people on Twitter that you see, that are thought leaders in these particular. Another great one is a gentleman by the name of Mark Guzdow, who's a professor at Georgia Tech University. He's another one that's always writing about. He uses a blog and Twitter to write about the latest in educational research around using technology in classrooms. So I think interacting and engaging with these people on Twitter is a great way for people all over the world to be able to see what the latest in educational research is.
That's great. Thank you so much. And I want to ask you another question. It's a little bit challenging one.
Okay.
For people like me and you who are totally into, I like technology for education because it's great and all that, benefits that it brings with along. But there are people that are saying, like, I don't like using technology for education. I think education that was delivered 100 years ago and it's still efficient, the same methods and all that. And I think it's not, technology is not the right for education. How would you approach those people? Do you try to put them on your side? Do you try to persuade them to go and try? Or what do you normally tell them?
Yes, that's a great question. So I think one of the things that we pride ourselves at Robomatter about is the fact that we try to offer educational solutions. And I think that's what teachers need. I'm a former teacher. I taught for 20 years. I taught middle school. And I myself don't have any kind of robotics or computer science background at all. I was certified to teach history and elementary educations, and ended up at the end of my teaching career, teaching robotics. But anyways, I think what's important is you have to be able to offer teachers, first of all, a full solution. So teachers are very busy. They have a lot of things to do. So if you introduce a particular type of technology into their classroom and they have to develop all the assessments for it, they have to develop the formative assessment and the summative assessment. They have to develop all the lesson plans for it. They have to figure out how they'll handle things like direct instruction and the problem-based learning that's included with that particular tool. If teachers have to do all of those things on their own, they're going to be very, very hesitant to do that. So first of all, you have to provide teachers with a total solution in terms of the tools that they have at their disposal. And then in addition to that, you have to be able to provide teachers with training. Professional development is so very, very, very important. It's one of the first lessons that we learned with our partners at Carnegie Mellon Robotics Academy around the introduction of technology in the classrooms. You can have a curriculum that is based upon learning sciences, that's based on research, but if the teacher doesn't feel confident about implementing it, they are not going to do it. So teacher professional development and teacher training is so very, very important. We've trained over 10,000 teachers here at Robomatter. We've trained teachers all over the world So that aspect of it is so very important. And then thirdly, when you're designing materials, it's very important that when you're thinking about design materials, we try to follow three things when we design materials. First of all the materials that we create, whether that's a software tool, the actual curriculum itself, whatever, all the materials that we create have to have a very low barrier of entry. So teachers that were like myself, that have no background in computer science or robotics or technology, they have to be able to come in and have success immediately, have to have a very low barrier of entry. But then secondly, it has to have a very high ceiling. So maybe you have those teachers that are a little bit more advanced, and after the teachers get started and they like it a lot, it has to have a high ceiling so that they're constantly feel like they have an opportunity to be challenged. So low barrier, give them an opportunity for success initially, but also a high ceiling so they can continue to feel challenged by the technology. But then thirdly, it has to have wide walls. So it has to attract as many different people as possible within it. So through the design of the things that you're making, you have to make sure that you're not just attracting, students that like to build things with their hands or students like to program, but instead you want to make these materials too attractive as everyone as possible. So if you think about those three things, first of all, creating total education solutions and not just one-off materials. Second of all, making sure that you have very strong element of professional development in what you're offering, and make sure that you give teachers an opportunity to be trained, and then also make sure they have an opportunity to have support during the implementation. And then thirdly, making sure that you're designing things in a way that you're always keeping these novice teachers in mind as you're doing it. That's very, very important. I think if you do those three things, you'll find teachers no longer rejecting the use of technology in the classroom, but instead accepting it and seeing how it can augment what it is that they're trying to do in their classroom. That was really what I really liked about teaching technology while I was still in the classroom. I had all of these things that I was trying to do with my students. Finding multiple solutions to a problem was a great example of one. It's something I always struggled with when I was teaching math. And when I started teaching robotics, a very simple solution, like program your robot to go through a maze. With my students, I had multiple answers to that, to that program. And the students were able to talk about, this is why I chose this particular way. And other students said, well, this is why we did it this way. And that was something I was trying to do in my regular classroom for years. That was always very difficult for me. And now here I am teaching an entry-level robotics lesson, and now students are able to do it in a very easy and authentic way. And as you see those particular things that you've been trying to teach in your classroom being taught very easily with the use of technology, that's when teachers really buy into it and they really explore it even further.
Outlining how difficult it was to teach robotics before and how great it is now and how easy and how you do that. So I think it shows actually the evolution of technology in the course of time and how it makes easier to deliver the classes and actually make them a lot more like vibrant and
Sure. Yeah. So just as a great example of that, I just bought my mother a new iPad a week ago, right? So we bought her the new iPad, and excuse me, she was up and running with her iPad after we got home within an hour. And she's, my mother is not someone that grew up with technology, doesn't use technology every single day, but her iPad was something that she can get up and running with immediately because it was very intuitive for her to use. There wasn't a lot of documentation that she had to read or go through. It was very simple for her to use for what it was that she wanted to be able to do. If we think about that same paradigm when we're designing technology for teachers, that gets to what I was saying before about having that low barrier of entry. If we think about that same thing when we're designing technology for classroom implementations, I think we'll be in really good shape in order to have all teachers excited about implementing technology.
Absolutely. And it's also another great example with the iPad. The technology becomes so much user friendly.
Yes.
That it's out of the box. You just click and go, and it's so easy, and it also, like many people, I think they're getting used to that. It makes their life more efficient and comfortable as well.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah, so absolutely with you here. And I totally enjoyed talking to you today. Thank you so much, Jason, for great ideas shared. All the links that I mentioned will be in the description of this podcast. And appreciate your time so much, and have a great day.
Thank you. I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you very much.
Everything changes.